Hey, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the sheep pen. Is that what we should call the Tone Shepherd studio? I don't know. But brand new from Pinstripe Pedals, without further ado, is the DISOxo PolRev. So Polarity Reverse. So Charlie has had the DISOxo, the regular one without the Polarity Reverse feature, but now he has crammed the Polarity Reverse feature into this tiny box of merriment. Like always, everything from Pinstripe Pedals is super high quality parts throughout. Neutrik XLR jacks, super high quality switches, super high quality jacks there. The enclosure is rock solid, touring ready. This thing is awesome. If you are not familiar with the DISO, is that how you say it, by the way? DISO? However you say it. If you're not familiar with this pedal, or if you're not familiar with line isolators, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But suffice it to say, I'm a huge fan of this guy. I've been using the big box DISO on pretty much all of my pedal boards, and it's been incredible. So the quality is awesome, and what it does is awesome. So let's talk about that. Line isolation versus direct box. I'm no physics guy, audio engineer. I don't know all the ins and outs. The website has some good information on that. Something to do with impedance matching. But let's just get to the, how does it affect you? Basically, if you plug a modeler into this, and now I'm a huge fan of modelers. I sell ToneX presets. It's part of my kind of main thing. But if you have ToneX or Iridium or the UA, Ruby, and Dream, or even the Quad Cortex, the 1/4 inch outputs on those want to see a line isolator. Don't really want to see a direct box. A direct box is actually going to lower the volume that those pedals are putting out in the first place. So it's kind of dropping that volume already. Then your front of house console or your recording desk has to increase the gain to compensate. What a line isolator does instead is keep that signal coming straight out of the ToneX, coming straight out of the UA, Ruby, Dream, and keeps it the same, pushing that signal to the console. And so for me, in my case, in a live situation with running a line isolator, basically the front of house console's gain is at 0 because I'm giving such a hot signal to front of house. Actually, you should warn, if you play a gig and you're playing somewhere else, you should warn the front of house guy, hey, don't preset the gain to 10 or 15 because I'm going to blow you out. So this will dramatically increase your volume. I literally just fielded a question on Instagram the other day about somebody asking, how do you get more volume out of the ToneX? Well, there's multiple answers to that question, but one piece of that equation is, what box are you using? Are you using a line isolator or a direct box? So we're going to take a look at that and show you some of the advantages of this. Then I also want to talk a little bit about polarity, phase, all that stuff. Why is it important to have a polarity reverse feature on a pedal like this? And if you're brand new to this whole thing anyway, what is polarity? What is phase? You hear those terms being exchanged a lot. I want to clear some of that up. Again, I'm not going to get super geeky and detailed, but let's jump into some of the basics and see if this doesn't help you out a little bit. All right, so I'm going to set up a little test rig for us. I'm going to use the Pinstripe Pedals multi-buffer to split the signal so I can have one guitar coming in and feeding 2 ToneX pedals. Then I will connect the DISOxo at the end of the chain and then come XLR out straight into my Apollo X8P interface. For now, we're going to make sure all the switches are down, which means they're in their default position, so no polarity being reversed, no ground being lifted. If you don't know a lot about the multi-buffer, this is an incredible pedal as well. Totally enhances your signal. Incredible, incredible buffer. Can't recommend it enough. So the very first test I want to do is just compare the volume output between the DISO and a regular direct box. Granted, it's a high quality direct box from Radial, but we'll see how they hold up. I'm just going to play some basic chords. I'm going to load up a capture of my Fender Pro Sonic on the right and an AC30 6TB on the left. So it's kind of hovering around -6, with the DISOxo. So let's throw the Radial DI on it and see what happens. So again, haven't touched anything, just swapped out the direct box, and here we go. It's kind of peaking out at minus 27. So almost a full 20 dB reduction going from the line isolator to a direct box. So without having to know all the technical why this is better and impedance, blah, 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 there's great reasons for all of that. But what you need to know as the user is the only way to get a significant volume increase out of these guys is to go to a line isolator and get one of the best ones in the DISO. Go with Pinstripe Pedals. You won't regret it. So let's talk about polarity, phase a little bit. Again, this isn't going to be super nerdy. I actually got on the phone with Charlie a couple weeks back for like an hour straight, and he just dumped so much information on me that I literally can't relay that all to you. It is so heady, so geeky. I think for the average user, I was trying to think, how do I like communicate all that? I don't know if I can. So I'm going to communicate this in the simplest way that I know how. If some of my information is incorrect, Charlie will correct me. You'll see it in the YouTube comments, or maybe an overlay or something if I send him a revision and it needs revising. So, but let me jump into something that I use in a tone workshop that I think could be helpful. A lot of people might not have grown up using real amps and mic, especially miking 2 amps in this stereo world. That's where things get a little bit confusing. Amps have a particular polarity, and that has to do, I think, with the number of gain stages, something like that. Again, the details aren't that important. Essentially, though, the sound wave that begins coming out of the cone of an amplifier will either start up or start down, and that, you can see here on this little chart here, that will determine the polarity of an amp. So the classic example is Vox AC30s have a polarity that is opposite from most Fenders. That's not an always rule, but a lot of the times you'll find that to be the case. So, for example, if this Vox amp, as the sound waves, as the speaker was moving back and forth, maybe the first movement of the speaker was back instead of forwards, and so you would get this downward arc on the signal first, and then it would go up, and then it would go down, and then up and down. So that would be that waveform. Then on the Fender amp, you would have perhaps the exact opposite. The speaker would start forward, and therefore you would have a rise before it dips down. Now, if you're to overlay those together, the physics of this, essentially, if you have one wave going up and one wave going down at the exact same starting time, those are going to cancel out. And so you would actually get no sound whatsoever if those two sources were perfectly the same, if they were phase aligned and all that. Let me give you an example of that. So let's actually change my other Tonex pedal right here. So now I'm going to have the same exact amp on the left and the right. And let's play through that for a second. So let's hop over to my Apollo. Let's break this apart so they're individual. So let's unlink them. And I'm going to make sure they're the same volume. So let's make them negative 12.5 here. So, all right, I've loaded AC30 on each side in my UAD console, which is basically my mixer for this session. I have one AC30 on channel 1, the other AC30 on channel 2 right here, and they're both panned dead center. They're both the same. There's no polarity reverse happening on either of these, and so basically what you end up having right here, in this case, is you have 2 of these at the same time. So essentially, you have this going on, and when you have 2 sources that are stacked on top of each other, actually the effect will be an increase in volume. The amplitude will increase, and you'll get a boost in volume. Let me show that by example. So if I were to only have one of these AC30s on right now, it would be at a certain level. If I had both of them on, that's a significant increase in volume. Now, they're both panned in the middle, so their polarity is exactly the same. Now, I'm going to reverse the polarity on the DISO on one of them, and you'll see what happens. Can't hear the sound at all. Almost completely canceled out, even though you see the waveforms on the meters, because what's happening is those two waveforms are counter to each other, that therefore completely canceling each other out. So what happens then in a different amp situation, so let's say you have one amp on one side and a different amp on the other side. Let's explore that. So let's go back here. Let's put that ProSonic back in. And now, let's hear something. Now you can tell if they are in polarity with each other if they boost in volume when they're summed to mono. So right now, they are both in mono. And so if I were to solo out just one of them, so I'm just going to solo out, basically this is the AC30. And then if I add the ProSonic, you get kind of a low-end boost, and you also get an added volume. So that's how you know both are in the same polarity. Now, I don't know how to say this exactly, but different amps don't have the same phase signature. So even though they're in polarity with each other, doesn't mean that they are 100% phase identical, which means if you were to reverse the phase on one of these, you wouldn't get it canceled out completely. The frequencies that come through when you reverse the polarity on one of them are the frequencies that are different from each other. So let me explain. So both in mono and both stacked on top of each other essentially. Now I'm going to reverse the polarity. That is a disgusting sound. But what you're hearing is sort of, if you take all the alike frequencies and subtract those are the frequencies that are different somehow. Again, somebody else, way more technical, could describe what's happening there. But these are the kind of things you want to look for. So, like I mentioned, all of my captures are in polarity with each other, so you don't totally have to have the polarity reverse feature on this. However, I know so many of us, even myself, use captures from different people. So what happens when you have, let's say, a Tone Shepherd capture with a different manufacturer's capture, and you're liking both, but one of them happens to be out of polarity with the other? It's always handy to have the polarity reverse feature just in case. Of course, you can do it on the recording side. Of course, you can do it at front of house on your console, but sometimes those methods are, sometimes you forget about it, or sometimes you forget, to tell your recording engineer or the front of house guy, and maybe it gets missed. And so it's just, in my opinion, it's always good to have it on your board. If you're going to buy one of these, invest in them anyway. It's kind of a small upgrade to get that polarity reverse feature. Might as well have it. So just for kicks, I'm going to hunt for a capture that might be out of polarity with one of my captures. So one of my favorites is the AC30, but let's find something different to pair with that. So I believe one of Jake's captures might be out of polarity with mine. Let's look at the Bad Cat, Black Cat, essentially the good dog. Let's try that out and see if that might be. I can almost tell right away that it is. Well, it's also dramatically less volume, so let's take care of that. Let's lower my AC30 to kind of just match it. That's the other thing, volume and gain. Let's say you had two of the exact same amps on both sides, but one of them had more gain or more volume. They wouldn't cancel each other out completely, because the amount of saturation and gain and distortion in a signal changes its phase signature, if you will, and therefore some frequencies will still poke through. Anyway, so let's get them matched in volume. Let's solo them out. It's also significantly dirtier than mine. So maybe also what we'll do just for fun is reduce that gain, the input trim on that quite a bit. Jake's captures are known to be much dirtier, at least his previous ones. I think more recently he offered less gain on some of his captures. But let's just turn this input trim, let's say, down to, all right, close enough. You get the idea. Just trying to match them a little bit. So you can tell if on their own they sound kind of bigger and fuller, and then together they don't sound that good. That's a good indication that they're out of polarity with each other. So let's just reverse that polarity. Let's change it again. So this is out of polarity with each other. Usually more low end means you're at a good range. Now, both in polarity and out of polarity still kind of display some phasiness, if you will. Still aren't, you know, the greatest in my opinion. Now, some amps just don't pair well together. Just the way they're EQ'd, the way they're balanced. At least some of them don't sound good in summed to mono. And so that's a thing you just have to be, you know, watchful of. Now, sometimes even if they don't sound good in mono, there still could be a place where they sound great in stereo. So if you hard pan these left and right, could be a different story. Now this is still with the polarity reversed. Now if I engage like normal polarity, you could definitely hear, you know, your ears kind of, it plays with your ears. If you're wearing headphones, probably be more dramatic. If you have studio monitors, it would probably be more dramatic, but I can hear it like crazy. Kind of gives me a seasick, uneasy feeling, but then when I reverse the polarity, it's much better. So these two amps could play well together. Mine's a bit warmer than his is, and that's not a bad thing. And so sometimes having a little bit of a different EQ on each side can be a good thing. It can help kind of create a wider sound, if you will. So that's up to you to play with. But I hope this just demonstrated some of the basics of polarity and phase and gave you just some tools to help, you know, diagnose some problems that you might be having with different captures you're trying. If you have any questions, drop a note in the comments and I'd love to answer that. You can also reach out to Charlie at Pinstripe Pedals. You can snag my ToneX captures at thetoneshepard.com. You can snag Jake's captures at teddytones.com, I believe. There's so many good stuff out there, so try them all and enjoy. But yeah, can't say good enough things about Charlie and Pinstripe Pedals. They make the best stuff. Can't go wrong there. I've talked enough. Just also want to invite you, though, to my Instagram channel if I haven't had an opportunity to meet you over there. I talk about all things gear and worship. So I talk about worship theology, worship gear, and like heart of worship stuff all in one. So I love both aspects of this whole thing and would love to just keep that conversation going. Have a great day. Be blessed. I'll see you in the next video.